All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Athletics for Life podcast. We're your hosts, Jeff and CD. And on our podcast, we like to interview interesting people in the world of sport. This year, we've been really focused on interviewing athletic directors around Asia. We just pick their brains for things that we can use in our own programs and that many of our listeners could hopefully use in your programs as well. And it's been really, really great this year being able to just interview a lot of amazing people and all over Asia. And we're excited to do that again today. So Jeff, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate to have Mr. Mike Deneef on the podcast, the Activities and Athletics Director at the American International School in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Another country we can tick off our list. We're going all over, a very knowledgeable athletics director. I was fortunate enough to work with Mike in China. He was the head of the ACAMIS competitions over there. Knowledgeable. He's been on many other podcasts and he's involved in a lot of other things outside of his actual job. He's been on the Globetrotting AD's podcast, School Rubrics. So you might have seen him around. So another great podcast for you today.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. So why don't we kick it off? We're here with Mike. Mike, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at and how you got there.
Airplane. So I am currently in Dhaka, Bangladesh. If people aren't familiar with the country, I'm sure they've heard of it, but they may not have a geographical, where is it in the world type of thing. To Carmen, San Diego, it's beside India, below Nepal, and with Myanmar on the other side, and a lot of water out the other direction. It's been, this is year 27 for me teaching overseas or in education overseas. So there's been a few stops in between. I tend to stay long in certain places. I was in Korea for, I think I was only in Korea for 3 years, Taiwan for 11, Shanghai for 8, and now 6 here in Dhaka.
Yeah, we met in Shanghai. I remember that. You were there for 8 years. Wow. A long time.
Yeah, it was, and really didn't want to go. I love Shanghai. If you ask me my top cities in the world, Shanghai will always be one of them.
You were at the Pudong school, right? Shanghai Pudong, or at the other one?
Yeah, Shanghai Community Pudong.
Yeah, and they're still in our ACAMIS division with the International School Ulaanbaatar, and I've been there once. It's pretty amazing. So that's a great place.
They better still be in that division. I actually ran that whole conference for a while.
You did. Yeah, you did. Can you talk a little bit more about the school, the American school in Bangladesh? What kind of school is it? The programs you have, some general information.
Where to start? So our school, it's the American International School of Dhaka, so it does have a definite American influence on it, but it has a pretty wide-ranging, as we all do, demographic from all over the place. There are no very big competing schools like you would have in other places where there's a British school or whatever. Like we kind of get everybody that comes in here. And the school's been around since the country's been a country, pretty much. And we're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary next year, not next week. That would be way too soon. And it really, throughout its time, and it still continues to be, even though COVID kind of slowed us down a bit, it's the hub of the expat community in the city of Dhaka. Everything that kind of happens in the city happens here. I'm trying to help create partnerships and things so that more things happen outside of our school, because it really stresses us to the brink. But beyond the school programs we run, we end up hosting everything because we have the facilities that can manage it. We run a community program as well. So when the school stuff's done, I'm running a community program outside of it, before school, after school, and on the weekends. So the school is the hub of the community, and it's kind of the lifeblood of the expat community here.
That's awesome. What kind of things do you do with the expat community? Like what are some of the events that are happening at your school that are maybe outside of the general AD stuff, the general sports stuff?
So one of the big things we offer that's been traditional here, I call it now the Taggart Community Adult Activity Program. It used to be called the Community Education Program, but that got confusing for some people, so we did a name change a while back. And it basically provides your normal like YMCA type activities to the greater community. Everything from yoga to Bangla lessons. We get people on our climbing wall in the community. We have your normal sports things. We have adult soccer, adult basketball, adult badminton. We have boot camps, fitness camps, pretty much anything. And it's reaching out to who are the people with passion and expertise in our community and allowing them the opportunity to bring that to. So the fun thing is it changes every year because people move in and people move out, and all of a sudden you get somebody new who's like, I'd like to run a course on relativism in the books of Dostoevsky. And then we throw it out there, and then 5 people join because they've got nothing better to do. So that's a little bit fun. That's slowed down with COVID. I'm looking forward to, I'm sure at some point we'll talk about what are you looking forward to, and getting those things back up and running is going to be big. We just started just last weekend, actually. We're running an adult mini cricket program with the embassies that are in the neighborhood, which we've never done before, because usually we don't have the field's time or space, but right now we're not running as many things. So we partnered with them, which will be really cool. And it's kind of a precursor. I think they're going to have another field they can use next year. So it's something that can keep going on into next year.
Something that you started, Mike, or it was already part of the school's culture to have these kind of community things after school time?
That was, I inherited it when I walked in. That was it. And it's really interesting because in Shanghai, I fought like crazy to keep everything community out of my school, because we had so many student things running, and I wanted to, and the community programs there didn't have a good reputation for taking care of the spaces and for really using them the way you wanted to use them. And so we really tried to, and we were a little ways out. You've been there. It's not exactly in the heart of downtown, so it was a little harder. But here it was like, I knew that coming in. This is something I have to do here. The community depends on it, and we really need to make sure it moves forward.
So interesting when you go to different schools and like the different challenges that you face, right? And one, you're trying to kick everybody out, and the other one, it's like, all right, how do we get more people to come in, and how do we manage all that? Yeah. You touched on it briefly, so let's get the elephant out of the room. What's it been like with COVID? You said you were just getting back into it this last weekend. Like, have you been able to train? Have you been able to have any tournaments for your kids, or has that all been kind of squashed?
So in this region, I've been really happy and appreciative. My gratitude's been a big thing throughout this process, that our school in our greater conference, CISA, has probably ran the most programs during the COVID time. There was a period like everybody else, we were shut down completely. We started ramping it up again a little bit at the end of last year, but then really at the beginning of this year, we hit it hard. We were heading into the Christmas break with plans to have fixtures with other schools when we got back in January, and then Omicron hit. And so we took another break. And so we just started, we were basically off for a month of activities. We were still in school. And then we cut short our season 2, started our season 3. We just finished season 3 now, but it's been all in-house. We haven't done anything, haven't been able to do anything out of house other than virtual with anybody at this point. It's not like in Bangladesh, we have local schools that we can partner with that are kind of in the same space we are, that can come in and play with us. So that was what I was working on in November, was trying to connect with other schools to see if I could get them engaged. But the local schools didn't even have their kids back in school at that point. So it was kind of a loss there. And so we did with every challenge, there's an opportunity. And the kids, we spent a lot of time over the last year and a half really working on being appreciative of what we do have, not letting our our expectations dim what's actually happening in our groups. I had last year, so my son graduated last year, and throughout his and his sister's careers, I tended to coach his sister more, just so that I didn't have too many blowups with my son, probably. But his senior year was supposed to be the year I was going to have my last time with him, because she had already graduated, and he's athlete of the year, 3-sport athlete. They're defending CISA champions in a couple of different sports. It was supposed to be his year heading into his senior year, and he didn't play sport at all. And it just killed me, because I'm the athletics director, and I can't create something for him to. I arranged for some places for him to play with his friends outside of the school, because we couldn't get into the school. But that was probably my personal biggest disappointment during that time. I missed a thing that had been looking, and it wasn't about succeeding at tournaments or things. It was that experience with him that I was hoping to have and share, that I knew what it was going to be. I knew how fun it was going to be, and it just didn't get to come. So but it's one of those things. I've got a healthy kid who's off in university now, and you got to be appreciative of what did happen, not what didn't happen.
He's doing okay right now?
Yeah, he's doing great,
higher,
actually. Yeah? He's at the University of Toronto, and I was really happy. A big Canadian school, so they have their varsity teams, which after missing a year of school wasn't going to be something that he was going to try for, but they've got a second level of teams that's above intramurals but below varsity. They call it the Developmental League, and they have 4 campuses, and so there's a tryout and there's a practice and there's a game every week, and he made that team and played on it. So that was awesome. He had and of course, he's playing, so he played sports, so that means he made friends, and now he's got a good solid group of people, and so everything's great.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. I do see behind you, Mike, a little poster from the Student Leadership Conference up. I have one too. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the virtual events that you've been engaged in with your school? We were part of that virtual student leadership program too. It's really interesting. How has it benefited your school and your students?
It gave us, I'll talk about the different things we did and then how they benefited. And we started off our conference, CISA, the South Asian Inter-Schools Association, I think is what they call themselves. Hopefully I got that right, or hopefully nobody who's in it listens to it. We did a virtual conference when we couldn't meet in November of basically November of last year, where kids in different schools had different challenges like trick basketball shots and all these kinds of things. But we did a couple of other really neat things. We brought in alumni who graduated to speak to all of the student athletic leaders that we had on the call about how to persevere, how to get through it, all that kind of stuff. And so that was really good, because it kept the conference name in the kids' minds without going away to the conferences. It was a way for them to interact on that. Through the conference, they ran a virtual forensics competition, which went really well. The Student Leadership Conference was really good for us. I had one group of presenters, and it gave them a very concrete goal and objective to focus on. And I thought they picked a really good topic, talking about the way we do sportsmanship in CISA, and it's a little bit unique. And now they've used that. They were all juniors last year, they're seniors this year. And all of them are using that as part of their applications as they're going off to university, their experiences with that. And then, of course, we just finished the student leadership one this year. And I've got my activities council. We've been really busy with some other stuff, but their break, there's no homework on break. But if they want to, I gave them the recordings of all the conferences that went on. And they're going to come back, and each of them is going to talk about one of them, and then we're going to talk about them a bit more. So it's been a way to stay, especially when we were completely virtual and we couldn't get into school, to stay connected to the idea of school organized sport and know that it was going to be there when this all ended. I think that's probably the biggest benefit out of all of it.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of the things that did come out of COVID were pretty awesome, and there are things that we could, continue to do, or maybe could have done pre-COVID. Now that you're kind of, hopefully you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. What are your goals moving forward? What are you hoping to accomplish?
So one of the things we did with my student activity leadership group, since we couldn't be doing sport, we started to talk a lot about what do we want, what is it we're not getting from sport, and how can we make that a key part of our culture here in the school. And so we started a program last year, started developing it. It's called the Tiger Way. Not very unique or but basically the kids have gone through, they've developed a mission statement, they've developed like what it looks like to be a Tiger on the court, and they've got like, so first they took the name Tigers and they broke it out into trust, integrity, grit, engagement, resilience, supportive. And then they took that and they said, okay, this is what trust looks like on the basketball court. This is what we want people to do. And there were 2 markers for that. So we did that for sport. That took a couple months to negotiate that out and fine tune the language and come to agreements. And then we went, okay, what does that look like in the classroom? Because we want our impact to be beyond just the field. And so we came up with a bunch of descriptions of that. And the kids have used that this year to really talk about the reintroduction of sport and why we're involved in it. And now our latest project is, we have one more kind of pillar, and it's what does it look like in the community or in your home? So if you're showing resilience at home, what does that look like? And I think that's been, so you guys know, every year you'll come up with situations where kids aren't living up to your expectations, or parents have questions about things. And this is a document and a philosophy statement that the kids have bought into, that I can just pull out and say, well, this is why we did this, because this was happening and it doesn't fit our culture here. And so building the culture, keeping the culture going, and really now taking that to other places when we start to travel and stuff again, that'll be one of the goals for next year.
Really cool. Yeah, there's different schools doing it different ways, but it's all like that connection, keeping that connection. What was your role in that, Mike? So did you facilitate that, or did the kids more do it? And because if you want to start something like that, how would you start?
So we opened it up. It's funny because I wanted the kids to actually use that topic, that question right there, and present at this year's student athlete conference about how we went through that. But they were they were in too many other places right now, so they really just couldn't pull it off. But it just basically was asking them, like, we were very clear pre-COVID, when you're on a team, this is what it means. But it never went past the team. And it wasn't always the same from team to team. So I opened the conversation with them. I showed them, so I was doing some coursework through the NIAAA, and I saw something similar done in the States with a program there. So I opened the conversation with them, showed it to them, and said, hey, do you think this is something you guys want to engage with here? And they were all on board. Immediately, they were like, yeah, and they were excited by it. And then at that point, it's just really just helping them with language and what do you really mean by this? And can we say that in a better way? And kind of that piece of it. And it was funny. So we come back to school this year, and our secondary school principal, new principal, we weren't, I guess, God, everything is such a blur. We weren't back on campus specifically the first couple of weeks. I think we were still doing some testing and stuff. You couldn't get on campus. So the principal put together this welcome video, and he reached out and asked the activities council if they would provide anything to add to it. And so the kids did a whole big thing on their Tiger Truths, we call them. And it was the star of the entire video. It's the star of the opening thing. Like, it basically said, this is who we are, and we're going to do this again. And now that video has been reshown and redone and all over the place. And that I had no part in. They knew what they were doing, and they just took it and made a video out of it, and it was awesome.
That's a really great way to go about it, because I just recently started a student athletics council. our Student Athlete Leadership Council, and it has similar goals, similar idea. And it just makes our life so much easier when you can get the kids involved and get them invested in their program. I'm curious though, other than getting the kids to come up with their philosophy, kind of what's your philosophy about sports and school and your program? How's it changed as you've been in different places, and how do you bring your philosophy to the school? I know you said, you've gotten it out of the kids and they kind of bring a lot of things forward, but how do you put your mark on a school?
I'll answer this in parts. So I haven't changed schools a lot. So I tend to be at a place long enough to really kind of be able to set a culture by example a lot of the time, just by being able to consistently do the same things over and over again. But then when you do change schools, like when I came here, this was a school that had a very strong culture. And so my first year, I just observed. I ran what was in place, and I made mental notes of things that I thought it might be better to move in a different direction, but I didn't change anything because I would have probably ran out of the place. And then at the end of that year, once I'd made, relationships was the first big thing to develop. So once I was able to connect with kids and connect with key people in the school, then you start asking questions like, wow, so how do you think it feels or what's the objective of having the underclassmen carry your bags when you go away on trips? What's the purpose of that for you guys? And then they start thinking about it. Well, it's just what we do. That's the way it's always been done. And like, we're seniors, so that's kind of what we can do. And I'm, well, what do you think a senior should be doing? And so we start going down that road. And then the next year you can start putting in some policies and like, yeah, well, maybe that we will say we can't do that anymore. But what I do want you seniors to do is you guys to be the leaders. You're the people we look up to. So what are the things you can do, and what do you think we should expect from you? So that kind of stuff begins to happen. The thing I try and take from everywhere I go, and part of it is every school I've been at, despite my attempts at a career trajectory to go a different direction, has been a small school. So we've had to punch up in terms of our weight class to try and compete. We've had to populate programs with the same kids over and over again because you don't have enough to move different one to different one. So I've always been on the side of you develop kids first, you develop sport second. And really you develop them in tandem. And then what I bring with me when I come to schools is the Positive Coaching Alliance double goal coaching philosophy. I share that information with the coaches. We put it into their job descriptions, we put it into the evaluations. And so we start to build that way, that we're building the character as well as the skill. And we've gotten to the point now, one of our main focuses moving forward is really pre-planning all those intentional life lessons that you want to get out of sport, actually putting them into the practice plan, just as you would for whether you're learning the jump hook today. So we're learning the jump hook, and we're going to talk about, like last day, we talked about how to handle emotional moments. We used the Will Smith thing. And we made a connection between like, okay, does something like that happen in sport? Like, what caused that to happen? And if it happened in sport, how would you deal with it? So that was a complete lesson plan within the practice plan.
That's really cool. Yeah, Will Smith. Man, hey, Mike, I'm interesting. How many times do you talk with your coaches? Do you have set meetings, and do you talk with the parents? How do you schedule that? How do you plan that?
In a normal year?
In a normal year.
Yeah. So we have a pre-meeting at the beginning of a season with all the coaches that are involved in that season's sports. And there's we go through an agenda. It talks about the double goal coaching philosophy, talks about one of our program goals, and this is a small school thing again. Our mission is to allow kids as much opportunity as possible without inhibiting any other program. So there has to be, what we don't want is the fights between the person running the play and the person coaching the basketball team about keeping, I get to have this person more than you do. So logistically, we organize our program so that those things don't conflict. And so part of the discussion with coaches is making them understand you have to stick to the timetable we have, because if you go outside of it, then I don't know where the conflicts are. And because every coach and every play director wants more time if they can have it. So yeah, so we have that pre-season meeting, and then it's basically an open door policy the rest of the year. I tell them, everybody from day one, is talking shop is my most favorite thing to do. So please drop by whenever you can. We have a postseason evaluation, which has been really powerful. A lot of basically just them self-evaluating and then talking to me about it, and then seeing if they have any questions or anything they want, and setting goals for themselves for next year, how I can help. Yeah, and then I try not to, and especially over the last, since COVID for sure, but even before that, I would say, I really try and be mindful of coaches' time, because they're getting paid to do, well, they get paid a little bit from me, but they're getting paid more and they're hired because of another job. And I need to respect that they need to do that kind of work so I try and make it as easy as possible to digest the information from me. I'll stop by their practices and have conversations when they're already, on my clock instead of on their own clock. And I really try and protect that as much as I can.
It's a good way to handle it. Just have that first meeting and lay the groundwork, and then as needed, just kind of poke around and chat with them.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how has your role changed in like your day-to-day? You mentioned you've been at smaller schools. Do you teach? Do you have classes? Are you full-time athletic director? Do you coach some of the teams yourself? And has that been different at all the schools you've been at? And if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about your day-to-day and what does that look like?
Sure. So starting out in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, my first school, I transitioned from PE geography classroom to what title did they give me? Secondary school coordinator, I think, which was basically a principal without the money. And when I was in that position, the athletic director left, and I assumed the athletic director position at the same time. And then I did that for, I think, another year, maybe, before moving to Shanghai. And then at Shanghai, it was I was the PE teacher, and I got release time for the athletics and activities. I think that changed over time, how much I got. I can't remember exactly how it worked out. But I was pretty happy with the breakdown usually, and I was really supported there. So that worked out fine. And Shanghai is a pretty easy place to manage activities because it is a very organized league. You don't have to chase around a lot of stuff. Like there's a meeting before each season, and then your entire thing is all planned out. And then it's just, if you already have your things in place, it all kind of works out. This job comparatively is a bear. It is, I tend to, you talk about the different hats, professional hats. I think I've got at least a dozen official professional hats. And the good news is the school recognized it. They recognized it before I got here, and it is just an administrative position. There is not any expectations for any other pieces of teaching to go on throughout the curriculum day. And it's needed. There's the community ed program. I run the Weeks Without Walls stuff that happens. All trips that are student trips out of here run through my office. I'm activities and athletics, so there's both sides of the equation that I have to have there. So it's big in that, and there's the support, and there still aren't enough hours in the day. But the other piece is I do want to still coach, so I will intentionally plan for coaching where I can. And if I had in a perfect world, I would do one season a high school sport, one season a middle school sport, one season an elementary school sport, and go across all 3 divisions so that I can have impact in all those areas. But what really happens is I need to pick up where somebody else isn't, where we're deficient. So like I'm coaching varsity badminton this year. Last time I played badminton was, let's see, if I've been overseas 27 years, it was part of my phys ed degree 29 years ago. But that's the great thing about when you're double goal coaching though, because I can bring a lot to the table in terms of helping the kids with things beyond just playing badminton. And I've got a lot of really good senior badminton players that can help me out with the skill stuff for showing the other kids. But so I would like to get to the point where I'm able to target where I coach so that it's more impactful from where I think the program needs it. But right now I'm still just filling in.
Yeah, it's not always fair to compare our different schools and different countries to China. The things how I run over there in Shanghai with 25, 28 schools, everything's smooth. I worked in Guangzhou area. You remember, Mike? It was always like 8, 15, 12 schools, everything super organized. So I always remember those stairs in Shanghai, Pudong, the stairs up and down in the school, like
5 floors, baby. The great thing was when I was up in that gym, nobody came to bother me. That was my happy place. I could just be up there and it's my little space and no one would bother me. And that's the thing, like one huge difference of moving to Bangladesh, they don't even have the other international schools to interact with. So when we're in season, I would say like 50% of our work time is really just finding somebody to play and trying to and we've cobbled together some really good seasons. The last year before we stopped playing, I think one of my basketball teams had a 25 game season, I think. But I have to try, like we go from trying to contact like national team level teams, and it's funny. So two Dhaka Bangladesh stories. So I won't name the first sport, but there's a sport we got in the national team to play, and we destroyed them by 20 points. And so then you're thinking, oh, well, okay, so that's the level we got to kind of look at. And so then we brought in another national level team, and I'll say this one because they're not going to be embarrassed by this. It was the girls football team, and they destroyed us. It was like we played 3 mini games, and because I knew they were going to be stronger than us, but over like it was like 10-0, 7-1, 13-2, I think were the scores. And they had media there. And the media reported it out as a total score and says the Bangladesh national team destroys American International School of Dhaka 30-2. And then there was this, went into the people started commenting, like, how dare they play our national team? Who do they think they are? And in the back of my mind, I'm going, well, I just played a different sport and we won by 20. So I was trying to, but that's kind of what we have to do. So there's schools here, like there's one school, great basketball program. So they're great to bring in for basketball, but they don't have a volleyball program. So we have to find somebody else to do the volleyball side of things. And we have to just kind of cobble that together during a year to try and make that work. So that's one of the harder parts of being here. Like any kind of place that doesn't have what we had in Shanghai or in Guangzhou or like that.
You mentioned that you were in the SAISA. How many schools does that involve? And if I understand correctly, you guys are on a different like yearly calendar than many other places in the world, or some of the schools are. With different start and end dates. So how do you organize all of that?
So we're actually I think in terms of like August to June, we're all pretty similar. Like that's not too far out of whack. What you do end up with is like our weekday is Sunday to Thursday. Some of our schools' weekday is Monday to Friday. So that, tournament wise, that causes it doesn't cause issues, but travel wise, it causes some issues. So we have 10 schools. There's us, Nepal, Chennai in India, Bombay in India, Sri Lanka, And then we start going quite far away. We've got a school in Muscat, Oman, Jordan, Amman, Jordan. And then we have 3 schools in Pakistan. And the Pakistan schools could travel to us. We can't travel to them. So we have 7 hosting schools, 10 schools total, 3 that can't host. And then we have a lot of geopolitical stuff in this region, like the Pakistan schools can't travel to India. So we have to, when we're organizing, like, okay, who's going to host where, we have to be mindful of those kind of things so that every second year, hopefully, the Pakistan schools can attend at least a sport tournament, because so we don't hold basketball back to back in India, so that they can travel at least one of those years, that kind of thing.
Does it mean that you're hosting a lot for that?
So we used to be a big hosting school.
Yeah.
The year I arrived, there was a terrorist incident in Bangladesh, and the American government declared it a non-family post. So throughout my time here, we have not been able to host. And so you asked me what I'm looking forward to next year. We get to host again next year. So it's been 7 years in the making, and it'll be the first time I've hosted a conference level event since I was in Shanghai. Oops.
That's something to look forward to. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been great. A while for you then too, a few years for hosting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did one thing 2 years ago, I think. Bombay ended up hosting 2 tournaments at the same time. And so I actually went to Bombay as the tournament director and ran the basketball side of things, and the local AD ran the soccer side. So I've ran an event, but just not in my own school.
Yeah, that's it's challenging. It's stressful to host, but it's also fun. Like you bring in all the other schools and everyone's coming to you. You can put on a great event. With all your years of experience, I'm sure you've got some gems in there. But what are some things that you're most proud of? Some things that you've accomplished, whether it's at your current school or at schools in the past? What are some things that just bring you some pride when you think back to that you were able to do that?
Well, I think the first thing, anybody who's been overseas this long, I raised a family overseas, and they are good people that are now going out into the world. And my wife and I still love each other after all these years overseas. Like, managing that piece of being an international person, and that's something I do cherish. In terms of the job, I would like to think that everywhere I've been, students were able to be a part of an inclusive, principle-centered program, and they took those ideals with them as they moved beyond school. One of the joys of being in the business this long is hearing from your former players, your former students that are doing things in different places, and they just reach out and say, "Hey, coach, I just wanted to tell you, I ran into John yesterday, and we were talking about, that time that he got." Well, yeah, I can go back to Actimus. I had one time when I had to throw one of my kids out of a gym because he overreacted, and I had to go and have a conversation with him. And he came back, apologized to everybody, did the right thing, just got overheated. And he has reached out in the past and said, "Hey, you remember that time? I really appreciate the talk you gave me." And, I keep that in my mind as I go through other situations like that. So getting those kind of connections, I think, is probably the most meaningful at this stage. And then I think the other piece with connections is the ability to be engaged at the conference level of things, like Jeff knows with Actimus, and being able to set conference level developmental procedures and policies that help so many kids enjoy the benefits from sport. And then just getting to know, like, you guys and all the different ADs, like those professional relationships. I just finished a podcast with Todd Parham and Chris Bishop, who I used to spend time with in Shanghai. One was at Concordia, one was at SAS Pudong. And we just finished a podcast about the NIAAA, and it was just, those connections are the friends you'll have forever.
Amazing. Yeah, and I remember it was my first year overseas actually when you were in charge of ACMIS sports, and I think
Well, I
I think
probably
you
scared the
yeah.
crap out of you. That year I was pretty like, we're gonna do this and we're gonna get it done because I knew I was leaving, so I wanted to like make sure we were on board before I
Yes,
left.
because you were leaving. You were leaving in 2015, right? You left, or is it that
Yeah,
long ago?
my first year here was 2016-17, so I'd be right. Yeah.
So that was your last year, and I was very impressed. I was impressed. I must say, I was very impressed. But Danny's been doing a great job after you. So it's still running. Hopefully next year again. You mentioned it early in the podcast, and you mentioned it just now. The NIAAA. What's your involvement in the NIAAA? And also the follow-up question, what kind of PD do you still do for yourself to get better at the job and just to grow as a professional?
So I've been involved in the NIAAA international series. So the last couple of years, I've done 901, 902, 903, and 904. So that's been where I've spent my PD budget last couple of years. I had to take another NIAAA level course. I forget what number it was that wasn't at the international side, because I'm going to be teaching one of the new courses that's coming up. So I took that course, plus I've been involved with Todd and Chris developing a course in what they call the 910 series. It's going to come out next year. And basically the idea is it's hot topics in international athletic administration. So they've got a list of 6 topics and they made mini courses out of them. So Todd and Chris and I have been working on that for about a year now. I'm going to, I think May 1st is my deadline to register for the virtual Changing the Game project, the Champions Way conference. You guys ever heard of that? No, well, let me give you a blurb on that one then, because I'm a big supporter of this one. So this is Changing the Game project is John O'Sullivan is the guy's name, and he has a podcast called The Champions Way. And he partners with people like from everywhere from Steve Kerr to championship Olympians, and he does this podcast every week, but he brings all these people together at his conference in the summer to explore different ideas further. And it's very much a youth empowerment based program where the focus isn't on winning and losing. The focus is on how to develop programs that really help kids be their best selves. But then it doesn't, the great thing is it brings in people like Steve Kerr and people that are above talking about it, like, that say that this is the way to develop into that level, the best way possible. So I've been away. I used to follow his stuff quite a lot, and then I got into the NIAAA stuff. So I'm stepping back into that area just to kind of reacquaint myself with what's new with that. And so that's kind of the direction. This summer, my biggest PD will be there, I think. And I'm getting old, so I'm actually spending some time, and this is what a lot of us have learned in the pandemic, right? Spending time thinking about what's best for me. And like I've been doing I'm doing a course right now called The Happier You. And it's just strategies about mindfulness and about self-awareness and about how to put that into practice in your daily life so that you're more in tune with what you want to get out of it. And so that kind of stuff I've been working on too, brings me to another point. I haven't let you guys talk, but that whole pandemic time, and because I think CD asked a little earlier about, how the role shifted. Wellness is now a huge part of everything we do in the activities and athletics program. And that's how I got into this kind of stuff and started moving forward with that.
Yeah, I think we were talking to somebody many episodes ago. I don't remember exactly who it was, but we were talking about, the silver lining that's kind of come with COVID and how we've had to adjust and make things happen, from virtual things to how we think about it to, just taking care of ourselves. And it's so important. And hopefully it's something that continues in a lot of our schools moving forward. Because like you said, it's just so important to just take a step back sometimes and think about what's best for you. And for us as ADs, what's best for our family and how can we balance that and still do a good job at work. I don't want to take too much of your time. We were talking a little bit before we hit record, and I know that after this, you're officially on your spring break as of the time of recording. What tips would you give upcoming athletic directors? Maybe, some people who are either new to the job, they're a PE teacher, they're a teacher in their school, they're going to take over the role, or maybe an athletic director who's moving to a new post. What are some valuable lessons that you've learned that you could share?
I think probably the most important thing is talk to everybody. Especially if you're new, have your North Star, why you're involved in things, and that's, your principle. It's easy. You don't have to vary from that, but there's so much around it that you might need to bend on, and you need to be able to understand where people are coming from. If you just try and bulldoze your way through and I know this, and it's going to create a lot of headaches. So really develop those relationships, I think, and reach out. It's hard because our job is so busy. It's really easy for us to get lost in the details and not step outside. So one thing I've done this year is I've programmed my watch for 3 times during the day, and I do a 10-minute, I call it a 10-minute AD walk. I just walk around the school, and I just look at the school through the eyes of an athletic director and think about things that I might need to do, and then just talk to whoever I encounter on the way, and try and get the pulse of what they're thinking. That's been really helpful. Be prepared for the time commitment. There's no way around it. If you think you're coming into this job and you're not giving your heart and soul to it, there's a wellness side where you do want to try and have balance, but understand that this job takes time. If you think it's something you're going to get a lot of free time out of, you better enjoy watching a football game. You better enjoy monitoring certain this dance event or whatever, because those are the things you're going to have to do. And if you don't enjoy those things, it's going to be tough for you. And then I guess it talked about the North Star kind of principle. I think this is a Stephen Coveyism, but keep the first things first. You're going to have a lot of different views on how things are going to be done, and none of them are easy decisions. A lot of it's very murky. There's different murky, it's good in this situation, but it's not in this situation. But if you understand what your priorities are, and you always put that at the center of your decision making, it'll make so much else so much easier. You don't get lost in the details. You just step back and go, oh yeah, this is what I'm about. This is what our program's about. So that means this has to go this way. And you can that'd be my advice for that kind of situation.
Those are some great tips. I'm gonna put my Google Calendar and put some 10-minute walks on there from tomorrow.
They're awesome, man.
No, I will. And you have to make time for that. It's just important, because it's easy to sit in your office all day and do paperwork, but you got to get out there and talk to people.
Well, so if you're going to do it, I'll tell you the other piece that helps with this. So I bring my phone with me, and you take pictures of things and you put it on your social media or whatever, your athletic account. And you just I'll be walking past an empty soccer field, and I'll just take a picture of the football field and be like, do you remember the time? Or, something like that. It just helps create that awareness part as well. Plus, you can take pictures of things that need to be fixed that you have to go talk to the general services about.
And call the maintenance guys to get it fixed.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Mike, we could talk for hours, and there's so much more you could share. We already want to thank you so much for your time. Kind of our last question we always ask is, what is next for you? Is you going to stay longer in Dhaka? Are there any goals you want to accomplish? You're saying you're getting old, but you're not that old yet. Come on. Are there any things for the future? You're maybe a certain country or school, anything?
I think, so I am now an empty nester. My world has been organizing sport for others and nurturing my children as they move through sports so that they became good people. That piece is gone now. And it's kind of I'm excited to see what I do with that. It's not extra time, but extra energy that I can put in some different places. So I think one of my goals, I think God, you know what? I sign contracts and I actually never look at when they end or not. I could tell you when I'm out. But I would hope I'm here for at least a couple of more years. My wife and I want to learn more about what Dhaka has to offer as a couple. We arrived in the immediate aftermath of a terrorist incident that impacted our school. 3 of our alumni were killed. When we arrived, we weren't allowed to actually walk outside on the street. We had to get chauffeured everywhere. And so then that started to move away, and then COVID hit. So we haven't had a lot of time to experience this area as a couple. So we want to do that. That's one of my goals. And I think it might be a bridge too far, but if I was able to help organize in Dhaka sports fixtures and inter-school fixtures that fit for everybody, that could be replicated down the road, that would be a good thing to leave this area with. So that'd be something I'd kind of look forward to. And then I'm supposed to be teaching a course at the NIAAA, so I think that's probably a good stepping stone as well, something to shoot for. Not fall flat on my face when I'm teaching an NIAAA course. That would be a goal.
Those sound like great goals, Mike. And we just want to wish you the best of luck. And thanks for giving us so much of your time and so much of your energy. The job does take a lot, and we appreciate the time you've given us. And hopefully you're able to enjoy your spring break and, just reset and come back ready when it's over and finish out the year. So yeah, thanks a ton. Much appreciated.
Hey, you guys, you're doing great work. That's one of the things, during the pandemic, that's the other piece is this CISA group, we realized we've got to be there for each other because there's nobody else out there that really understands exactly what we're going through. And by creating this forum, I haven't watched all your videos, but I do watch a bunch that I see people that I know, and it helps me, and it makes me pick up the phone and go, and now his name's blocked. Oh, Turner. It was when I watched Turner. So it's like, oh, I need to email Turner and ask him about this thing that we were talking about before. And so you're a part of helping keep our group together, which I think is really important. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we're trying our best, and it's just amazing how much we learn from everyone. We take things away every time we have a podcast, and that's how we keep growing as a professional, right? We're learning from each other. And I think both CD and I will definitely do the 910 course from the NIAAA once it's ready. Yeah. We will.
You'll like it. There's a good choice in there of really impactful things. I think people are going to really get a lot out of it.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, Mike, for your time. It's great to catch up again. Good to see you again. Hopefully in the face-to-face in the future. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing what you shared with us today. I've got tons of quotes and things to share with everyone in our description. So thanks again.
Yeah. And just, if there's ever you guys are faced with anything, you want another ear, just shoot me an email, shoot me a line. Happy to engage in conversation.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Will do, Mike.
Will do. Thank you so much. Enjoy your spring break. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. We just sat down with Mike in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Great interview. What really stood out to me was, he mentioned the athletic director job is one that takes a lot of time, right? The tips for the ADs was just recognize it's a time commitment, which it definitely is. But then also how much he was involved with bigger picture stuff, right? Like we're so busy. You're busy. I'm busy. Athletic directors listening to this, we're all busy. And then Mike would take it upon himself to, lead ACAMIS, which was probably 70, 80 schools at the time or whatever it was, and make that great. Looking at his conference and how he can improve that, looking at, he said his goal was to look at Dhaka and see if he can create something as far as like a league or some sort of system that's going to last after he's gone. And, it's people like that really give you something to aspire to. And you realize okay, I'm so worried about do I have enough volleyball players for Saturday and have people paid for their jerseys? And here Mike's worried about how can I get all the schools to be able to play all the time and it works for everybody. So it's a great interview and definitely a ton of experience from Mike, and glad to be able to pick his brain for a little bit.
Yeah, tons of information, tons of tips, tricks, and to better our jobs and to better ourselves. I remember, being fresh in the job in 2014. And like you said, Mike ran ACAMIS, 70, 80 schools. It's been growing, but he made a massive impression on me. I was not scared, but very impressed. But you need those kind of people that they show you what the standard is, and you have something to work towards. And that really helped me to constantly improve myself. People like Mike and other people in those roles. Main takeaway for me is, I do walk around the building a lot, but are those meaningful walks? yeah, sometimes I go to get some tea or stuff, but I can also walk around and just take some pictures, like Mike said, of the building, or see, hey, how can we improve the little things, or have just a chat when someone you see on the hallway. So make those more meaningful. And I'm going to schedule them once I go home tonight.
Yeah, I get my walks too, but that's just because I teach a PE class and then I have a chemistry class. So I got to go from here to there and back. And then I got a swimming lesson. So, but yeah, definitely doing it with a purpose and just keeping my eyes open as I'm going to and from is a great tip. Anyone who listened hopefully took away how important it is to just stay active in PD, right? Mike's got almost 30 years experience. He said he's 27 years overseas. And he's still taking, I think he mentioned 3 courses that he's currently taking or just recently finished, and going to a conference this summer and registering for that. So like, that's how we just get better at our job, is just continue finding those courses and continue just, having that North Star guide us and just hone what we're all about. And those courses definitely help. So if you haven't already, we've mentioned it many times on the show. Check out the NIAAA. They offer some tremendous courses for athletic directors. Just about anything. They've got stuff for the American athletic directors. They've got stuff for international athletic directors. I don't remember the numbers for each one, but there's a ton of courses on there and plenty to learn. So do check those out if that's something that you're interested in.
Exactly. And you can actually get certified, which will help you in your career if you want to go to a better place, better country. So check that out. We will put all the descriptions, all the links in the description. One thing you feel that once we talk to these experienced ADs, they know exactly what's going on in their building and how to approach a job. Waik said that in his first year, he didn't change anything. He just looked around. And you hear more people talking about that. Sometimes we all have our own philosophies, our own ways of talking, communicating, and organizing things. But when you go to a new place, sit back and see what's going on. Okay. And that's very important. It's something that I'm going to take away also from Mike, is when I'm moving on and we're moving on, just see what's going on and what you can do to make it better. Because sometimes things are already in place and your way is not always the good way. So tons of tips. We want to say thank you to Mike for his time. We will meet again somewhere online because the world is getting smaller with us ADs chatting with each other and sharing. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast today.
Yeah, definitely. And if you did, like and subscribe, share it with your coaches, share it with your AD friends in your conference, in your region, schools in your area. And like we mentioned before, if you've got something you're proud of in your program, or you do something a little bit different and you think people would benefit from hearing that, just get a hold of us. Jeff's on LinkedIn all the time. I'm on there once a week at least. But you can find both of us on there. Just send us a message, and we're always looking for more guests. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.